Hello and welcome everybody. Thank you for joining the National Conference of State Legislatures webinar. A miles per gallon sticker for houses, home energy labeling, hosted by the NCSL Energy Program. We also have a number of other upcoming webinars and energy program resources that you may be interested in, so feel free to visit those at ncsl.org. My name is Glenn Anderson. I'm the Energy Program Director at NCSL and will be moderating today's webinar. The webinar will explore home energy labeling programs and policies and state and local case studies as well. I want to note that the webinar is being recorded and we will be posting the recorded webinar and presentation slides on NCSL's website within a few days and we'll be sending out notification. We do have three national experts with us today who will be discussing the reasons behind the growth of home energy labeling and the various approaches involved in home energy labeling, as well as how states are using the programs to bring greater transparency to the home and rental market. Our presenters will be answering questions after the presentation, and I wanted to note on the right-hand side of your screen, you will find a question box, and if it's not open right now, you can click on the arrow and that will open it. And feel free at any time to enter your questions in the box and we will ask those questions of the presenters at the end of the webinar. So I will start off with our first presenter, Joan Glickman. We're very fortunate to have her. She is a Senior Advisor and Program Manager of the Home Energy Score Program at the U.S. Department of Energy. Joan will discuss DOE's Home Energy Score program, which helps current and prospective homeowners understand how efficient a home is and how it compares to others. Please welcome Joan Glickman.
Thank you so much, Glenn, and thank you to NCSL for inviting me and the rest of us to speak today with you. I'm always happy to talk with state and local governments and get to the folks that are actually doing all the work out there where it needs to be done. So we really appreciate the opportunity. And I'm excited to talk to you about residential labeling, which is what I spend a lot of my time doing here at DOE. And with that, I'm going to get started with my slides. I think I can. Okay, good. It's working. So today I'm going to talk to you briefly about why we think residential labeling actually matters and why you should care about it. What we do here with a program we call the Home Energy Information Accelerator, which is a collaboration between real estate entities like the National Association of Realtors and energy efficiency groups like some of the ones you're hearing from today and others around the country. Then I'm going to tell you a little bit about the Home Energy Score, which is a rating system that was developed here at DOE, and finish up by suggesting some ways that states, if you're not already involved, can take steps to get involved in this area. So, oopsie, I went too fast. I don't know how to go back now. Let's see. There we go. Apologies, I'm getting used to this setup. Okay, so why we think energy labels actually matter. It's really just like, people like to think that when they're making investments in their house, they invest in the bathroom or they invest in the kitchen, you can see it. And, when you show off your house to your friends, you're excited to show the improvements you've made. And then hopefully when you're selling your house, you're excited to get some of that money back out of the house investment that you made. So it's the same thing with energy, but unfortunately, when we make investments in energy improvements, whether it's putting insulation in or changing, out our heating system or our cooling system and getting a much more efficient Energy Star product in there, no one really knows, first of all, what those different numbers mean related to those products. And if I tell you you have, R61 or whatever in your attic, people don't really get that, and they don't get how that all adds up to something that's meaningful. So we need to figure out a way to make that meaningful and to make it visible. And that's really what energy labels do. It puts it in a very simple terms that any of us can understand and tells us really how efficient the home is, how much energy it's likely to use if you move into it, and pretty much what you're getting. Kind of under the labels, what does this all mean? If you're looking at lots of different equipment and the various way the house has been maintained, what does that mean for you as a buyer? And if you've made a lot of investments, in your house and you want to get credit for them just like you did with the upgrades you made to your kitchen, here's a great way for you to make that information available and capture the value at time of sale. So that's really it, getting all these different entities involved to understand what that information is through a label. Sorry, I'm having a little trouble with my computer thing. Okay, there you go. So it turns out people really do care about this information too. It's not that available necessarily in an easy, way to find it, but there are a lot of studies around the country that have indicated that if you have energy efficient homes and you can make that information known to the buyer, the home will sell faster and it will sell for more money. So, you can, take or leave some of these studies, but overall we'd found that overall I'd say they are consistently showing a 4 to 6% increase in terms of, I'm sorry, I'm getting very distracted by this thing not working. They're showing a 4 to 6% premium in terms of whether or not, if they're efficient, they sell for that much more generally. Obviously, it varies from location to location, and you might have areas where people care more about this than others, or where you have higher energy costs and they care about that. But generally, you will find that all the studies are showing a good indication this way. And National Association of Realtors just came out today with a report that showed that, I've forgotten what percent it was, but it was a very high percent of buyers really cared about what they called sustainability, which energy efficiency is obviously one piece of that puzzle. And they also found there was an interesting study in Chicago that showed even if a home is not energy efficient and you're just showing the bills, by giving that information, you're giving the buyer greater certainty, or at least that's what they believe is driving it. And they found that those homes with the energy information, regardless of whether it was a bill that was high or low, sold 1.5 cycles faster. So I believe that's, in realtor terms, that's 1.5 months faster than the homes that did not show that information. So even if it's not energy efficient, which obviously the vast majority of the homes in the country are not, because we just, they're older or they haven't been upgraded, et cetera. And this, there's no fault to that. It's just the fact that we just haven't made those investments because it's either inconvenient or we haven't seen a value. But in any case, it's something that home buyers really need to know when they're looking at homes. So what we did to kind of make sure that all this information was getting out into the hands of people that needed to know was we put together this Home Energy Information Accelerator. And the Department of Energy has a few different accelerators focused on different topics. And the idea is that there's some good stuff going on in the market by states and local governments and nonprofits and industry. All of those folks are doing interesting things in this area, but it needs a little bit more of a push, and it hasn't been taken up by a broader array of people in the market because there's either different barriers or it's complicated or for whatever reasons. So for those reasons, we put together this Home Energy Information Accelerator, and the folks on the phone today are involved in that, which is great, along with a number of different groups around the country, both nationally and also at the local level. We have, as I said, we have the National Association of Realtors that's involved. There's a Council of Multiple Listing Services, which you may not realize, but there's over 700 multiple listing services around the country, which obviously list all the properties that are for sale. And so groups like that, there's also something called the Real Estate Standards Organization, which actually creates standards for the information that you see in the multiple listing services. So there's all these different groups out there, and in the real estate side, and then there's all these groups out there who care about efficiency, but getting that, communication going wasn't the easiest because we obviously, just work in different fields. So what we did was we looked to where there was already leadership going on, and you're going to hear from two of those today, Richard from the Northeast and Roger from Oregon, as well as some other folks around the country. And what they're doing is really trying to build systems that pull all of that information together. So whether it's a home energy score or a home energy rating index that you'll hear about later, or a LEED certification or Energy Star, they're trying to pull that together and make it easy to populate the multiple listing services with that information. So when you go out and look at houses, you're not only seeing what the taxes are, but you might be able to see what the expected energy cost is, or you're not only seeing the square footage, but you're also seeing that it got a score of 8 out of 10. That's the idea, and you can then rely on your realtor to help explain that to you. So that's part of the process. It's education and making the information easy to get. So, oops. Okay. So as I said, I was going to go through the Home Energy Information Accelerator quickly, which I just did, and now move on to the Home Energy Score, which is the rating system that Department of Energy developed about 7 years ago. And we did a lot of work in terms of analysis and piloting with lots of folks out there who tested this system, and we think we've come up with a great system that is both reliable and easy to understand. And the reason we even developed it was that we realized there were rating systems that were being used, HERS primarily, for new homes, and builders were willing to do that because it's a great system for new homes. It compares it to code, etc. But it costs a lot of money, and people who owned existing homes just weren't going to spend between $500 and $1,200 or whatever dollars to get a rating. They just didn't care. There wasn't a real reason for them to do that. So we tried to come up with something that was reliable, maybe not as granular as the HERS rating and not comparing it to code, but something that was simple to do and could be done, for a cost of somewhere between $75 and $150 generally, depending on where you live and what people want to charge and what they're willing to pay. So we came up with this. It's intended to be a miles per gallon type of sticker that you get, the same kind of idea you get for a car, you now can get for a house. And just like, this car here, it says it's getting 19 miles per gallon. I don't know if that says combined city, highway. So that car, the way they calculated that is they calculated how much that car will deliver in terms of fuel economy for an average user. So somebody who's on average, keeping their car maintained at a certain level and they're driving the speed limit, et cetera. But if you are somebody who doesn't keep your car maintained well and the tires are deflated, or you like to speed, you're not going to get that fuel economy. You'll get something less. And if you're somebody who's great about it, you might get something more. So similarly, the Home Energy Score is telling you how that home is going to perform with an average user. You might use more if you have a lot of kids or you have a lot of TVs that you leave on all the time, or if you're very frugal and very conscientious about turning things off and keeping your thermostat set at reasonable levels, then you might do better than what it says. But it gives you a general way to do an apples-to-apples comparison. And it's reliable, easy to understand, and can be done by a wide range of people, including home inspectors, contractors, etc., energy auditors. So quickly, I'm just going to show you what you get with a Home Energy Score, which is it's on a 10-point scale. This house scored a 3. It gives you recommendations of how you can improve the house. In this case, it's telling you that cost-effectively you could improve it to a 7, which means that the improvements would pay back in 10 years or less. It takes about an hour or less to complete. The home inspector or whoever's going through your house collects about 40 data points, and then they generate this report, which is based on an energy model that we run here at Department of Energy. And it takes a minute to run the model. It'll take them about an hour to collect the data and put it into the tool. We allow folks, states, whoever our partners are, to customize the report. The one on the right gives you more data, inputs, and outputs that they might be interested in. There's other parts of the report. It's basically 3 parts. This is just the data that was collected, as well as I'm worried that the bottom is cut off here, at least the version I'm looking at, unfortunately, on my screen. But if you can't see what it says at the bottom, it's basically that if you're a partner, you get all this information. So utilities, states, and cities would have all this information about the housing stock in their area, whichever houses have been scored. So they find that to be useful, not only for the person you're providing it to, but for the partner who wants to keep track of what's going on in their housing stock and what they should, potentially provide incentives for improvements. As I said, it also develops recommendations. These are the kind of things you'll see. And frequently what we found is that people who get the score are much more inclined to understand that, we've done studies that shown this, that they're much more inclined to understand that cost effectively you are going to do much better if you improve the levels of insulation generally, or make your house tighter in terms of air sealing and duct sealing, than necessarily just replacing a piece of equipment. Because we all know there's Energy Star out there. It's easy to see, just like I said, we tend to like things that we can see and touch. But most people don't realize that sealing their ducts and adding insulation is going to do a lot to improve the efficiency of their house and also make it much more comfortable. Sorry again about this not going so well with the thing. Okay, oops. So to date, we've worked with our partners around the country who've scored over 60,000 homes. That's in the last 5 years, a little less than that. We have about 450 assessors who can go out and score homes right now, and we expect that number to increase really quite dramatically over the next year because we're making a lot of changes that will make it easier for people to get trained, etc. Everything that we offer through the Department of Energy is free, so it's free to use the tool. As long as you're qualified, you can use it. It's free to get trained and do our test, etc. And you don't have to use our tool directly. There's a lot of actual private commercial software platforms that actually tie to Home Energy Score, whether it's home inspectors that can use it or home energy auditors and utility programs that are tying to it in the back end through what's called an API. Okay, so I just wanted to end by saying that there are some financing products that also make the score attractive. FHA and Fannie Mae, both in the last year or so, have issued different products into the market that provide incentives or provide some benefits to borrowers to actually get a score. It's not used widely, but we'd love to get the word out to more lenders that this is possible and to more borrowers to ask for it. And I know many states are familiar with either using PACE for commercial building or in some cases already using it for residential. And we think that the score in concert with PACE can really offer some consumer protection that PACE alone won't necessarily provide. So basically it'll give you an idea of PACE is just a way to finance improvements through property assessment type of add-on to your property taxes. And what we're finding is that people like to know what else they can do or to know that they're going to get a good deal when they buy that, higher efficiency air conditioner or whatever. So by using the score with that, you can provide another level of consumer protection. And we have some great stories of green banks and others who are doing this, whether it's with solar or with other efficiency products. They're really making the score help consumers make better choices for themselves. With that, I'm just going to end by saying I think that states are great leaders in all sorts of different parts of our economy and in our world. And here, I think we already have some states that are doing a great job leading the way. The reason it makes sense to do something at a state level or can really help is that frequently it helps to have a statewide unified approach. Just like you have all these different multiple listing services in your state, some states have, I think, close to 100 or something crazy like that. Maybe not quite that many, but 20 to 30 for sure. This would give you a way to make sure that if you're looking anywhere in the state, you're seeing the same kind of information. So it reduces confusion in the market. Obviously, you care about your homeowners and your residents, and this is a great way to give them good information when they're buying a home, particularly for first-time home buyers. It's a way for you to keep track of what's going on in your housing stock, figure out what needs to be done from an investment standpoint, and also hopefully motivate people to make those investments, make their homes more durable and up to date. And lastly, it's a way that if you do something with Home Energy Score or labeling in general, it can certainly be linked to other statewide initiatives you might have going on, whether it's jobs and training or weatherization, et cetera, utility programs. Any of these things can marry well with energy labeling for homes. And of course, there's always the opportunity to lead and set yourself apart. We have a few states, but you certainly would be among the first if you got started. And I'm just going to end, I don't know if you're familiar with this group called the American Council for Energy Efficient Economy. They issue a scorecard, I think, every couple of years for states, and then on opposite years, I believe it's for cities. I just put up the top 10 in both categories so you can see where you lie. If you're in those top 10, congratulations. If you're not, I'm sure that you can get there with some work. This is really reflecting all kinds of things related to energy efficiency, not just in buildings, but in transportation, et cetera. And I just wanted, the ones with asterisks are just showing you that those are places where we actually have things going on with a score. So there's plenty of places that don't have it. And we're excited to get the word out there and work with you if you're interested in seeing how it might fit. And with that, I will just point out that we have a conference coming up in May. If you're interested and can be in DC, we'd love to have you. And you can find out more about it. And of course, you can always get in touch with me or our general team at the emails here and find out more at our website. So thank you very much for the opportunity to talk.
All right, thank you, Joan. That was a great overview and introduction to home energy labeling and scoring. I wanted to mention and remind folks that are attending, if they may have joined a little bit late, that they are welcome to answer or to enter any questions for our presenters, who will then answer those at the end of the webinar. You can enter those questions in the question box on the right-hand side of the window of your screen. So our next speakers will talk a little bit about actual programs and how they are implemented. So our next speaker is Richard Fazy. He's from the Energy Future Group. He is a principal and co-founder of the Energy Futures Group in Heinsberg, Vermont. He's a founding member of the Residential Energy Services Network, ResNet, which developed the home energy rating scoring program that has completed over 1 million home energy ratings. Please join me in welcoming Richard Fazy to the webinar.
Hello, thank you, Glenn. I'm not quite sure that you want to see my screen. Can you see my screen at this point?
Yeah, we're just getting that up.
Okay. Are you able to advance? Okay. There we go. Thank you very much. So thank you for the opportunity as well to present today. My name is Richard Fazy, as Glenn introduced me. I'm with the Energy Futures Group. We're a small consulting firm in Heinsberg, Vermont, just south of Burlington, and do a lot of work, as you can see on the screen, in energy efficiency and renewable energy policy and program design with a range of clients throughout the U.S. and North America, and some work internationally as well. I've been working in this field for a while. Been working on labeling buildings, rating and labeling homes primarily for probably 25 years, and so I'll be speaking a little bit about some of that experience, providing a little bit of supplementary information to what Joan just presented, and then finish up with some overview of initiatives that are going on in the Northeast primarily, but the U.S. as well. I'll wrap that up with some lessons learned. But I'm going to start with a little bit of following on different image, but just reiterating the point that Joan made as well. Why are we doing this? Why are we labeling homes? And really, what we're trying to do is help markets work by making energy performance visible. And this is sort of the cycle that we like to think about in terms of how the market works, and how, by making energy visible in our homes, we actually are encouraging homeowners to invest in buildings, and for the market to recognize that and provide value, either in terms of purchasing homes sooner, as we heard about in the Chicago example, or offering more for the purchase price of a home. So the cycle working essentially that if the owner discloses the energy rating by having a label that's put in the multiple listing service or part of the sales process, that would inform buyers or renters. The buyers or renters will favor those more efficient properties over the less efficient properties. Therefore, they'd be willing to offer more for those properties, and increasing the value based on energy performance. For those properties that aren't as well positioned, there's an incentive to upgrade and improve those properties, so that when it comes time to sell or rent them, by disclosing the performance of those, the market recognizes it, and this cycle will continue and move to upgrade our housing stock. So with that in mind, a little bit broader background in terms of where these initiatives have come from. Home Energy Rating System, or HERS, as you'll commonly hear it referred to, have been around since the mid-1980s. We started a program here in Vermont as part of that in 1986 and 1987. We issued our first HERS rating. There are 4 or 5 other states at the same time that were doing that. That has really moved to become the predominant new construction focus, where HERS ratings are used in new homes to qualify for the Energy Star label. They've been recognized for tax credits, federal tax credits. There are quite a few states that recognize HERS ratings in terms of energy code compliance for new construction. And then there are a number of other labels like LEED for Homes and National Green Building Rating System and others that use HERS, or Home Energy Ratings, or the HERS Index, all the same thing, but essentially use those as recognition for determining that HERS score. There have been about 2 million HERS ratings issued since ResNet, which is the organization that manages the HERS system, has been in effect since the early 2000s. In addition, there are a number of disclosure policies that are in place in primarily cities, but states as well, around the country. Many of these are in place for larger multifamily and commercial buildings, and you'll hear that benchmarking as the sort of terminology for those larger buildings. We're not going to be focusing on that today, since our focus here is on single-family homes. But in many of those jurisdictions, there are policies in place that either require or encourage building owners to provide information about how efficient those buildings are, so that renters or buyers have that information in shopping around. There are some others, energy bill disclosure or checklist requirements as well in some other jurisdictions. I've got a list here I'll be sharing about some of those that are already in place. There are also 3 cities, Austin, Berkeley, and Portland, that currently require at the time of sale an energy audit, so that the buyer is informed and can make decisions about the homes that they're looking at and purchasing. We'll hear a little bit more from Roger as the third speaker today about some of what the innovation in Oregon, which started in 2007 with some pilots with the energy performance score, and then we've just heard from Joan about Home Energy Score and the Department of Energy's efforts that were started as a pilot in 2010 and really launched in 2012, about 6,000 of those issued. So this is sort of the landscape of rating and labeling that's out there currently. Just in terms of the 2 primary rating efforts that are underway, Home Energy Rating System is the visual is on the left. It's a HERS index. It's really sort of like a golf score. The lower the score, the better. The reference home is set at 100 points. It's basically a new construction code home of a few years ago, but it's a 100-point home. Built to code would receive a 100 score, and the lower the less energy you use relative to that code home gives you a lower and lower score. So the goal being a 0 energy home receiving a HERS index of 0 would mean that a home that would be very efficient and also produce all of its annual energy usage on site. So that would be through solar photovoltaics or another renewable energy system. So most new construction code homes are in the range of 60 to 70. This particular example is a 65. That's about the average new construction home for the couple 100,000 homes that went through the home energy rating system last year. And then we heard from Joan about the home energy score, which is really focused on existing homes. So in terms of the 2 major home energy rating and labeling initiatives that are out there, these are the 2. Just a point of clarification, because this helps in understanding these going forward. We're really talking about asset ratings, and an asset rating is, as opposed to an operational rating, both the HERS index, the HERS rating, and home energy score are asset ratings. So these are modeled for their energy performance using average or assumed standardized assumptions for occupancy and weather. So if it's based on, instead of it being operational, which would look at the actual energy bills and would go up and down depending on how many people lived in that home, what the temperature thermostat settings were, what the weather was for that winter or summer, and would change over time year to year. We're talking about asset-based ratings that are standardized, assumed occupancy based on number of bedrooms and number of occupants that would live in that house and the number of bedrooms, average weather conditions, and it would be a fixed score over time. So this, regardless of who lived in that home previously, somebody who's buying that home would have a sense of, on average, how would that home score. So these systems we are talking about really focus on an asset basis. Just a pictorial sense of some of the activities that we've been having going on in Vermont for a while. I mentioned we started energy-rated homes, which turned into the home energy rating system. But we started that in 1987, and there's been a number of initiatives that have gone on here that are revolved around new construction and also existing homes as well. We've got, right now, we've worked to the point where we've got the realtors on board that are working with us on a piece of legislation that would, at the time of sale, mandate information about these home energy rating and home energy score systems. So working in partnership over a period of time, we've seen some great progress, and I'll touch a little bit on some of the other initiatives that are going on out there as well. I'm sorry that the bottom this seems to be cut out a little bit on my screen, but South Dakota is the one state on there. So this is a table just to give you a snapshot that there is quite a bit of activity that is going on out there right now. We've got a number of cities and counties that do have residential energy labeling or transparency policies, as the Institute for Market Transformation, the group that put this matrix together, calls them. So those range from providing utility bills to energy audits as well. Each of these initiatives is somewhat unique. They're depending on the local politics and the initiatives and the goals. They have varied between purely information disclosure, maybe making utility bills available, all the way up to places like I mentioned before, Portland, Berkeley, Austin, that require actually an energy audit or a home energy score be done, and those results be provided to the buyer. So there is activity out there now, but there is but some of that really varies in what's being put forward and how they're enforced. As well, there are a number of different labels that are out there. This information is conveyed in a number of different ways. I'm not going to go through the details of these, but here are just examples of three that don't, these aren't all necessarily in place at this point in time. Vermont has a home energy profile. Massachusetts had the home MPG. Oregon has had the energy performance score. So there are a number of ways of simplifying, taking this complex information and boiling it down to some simple ways, hopefully that with some education, consumers can understand what they're looking for in terms of annual energy use, dollars per year, a 1 to 10 score, for instance. And so one of the efforts that's underway currently is to actually work to move those scores to a similar platform. So in addition to what Joan mentioned regarding the Home Energy Information Accelerator. This is really a national effort that's looking to try to take all of this, this energy information and move it into a simplified process that gets it into the multiple listing service and gets it in front of buyers and sellers so that markets can work. There are a number of other initiatives that are in place out there right now as well. The Helix project, Home Energy Labeling Information Exchange, is being led by Northeast Energy Efficiency Partnerships, a nonprofit state group of states in the Northeast that is working to make the IT, the information technology, work so that the information that comes out of the home energy score can automatically populate the multiple listing into the multiple listing service. So these efforts have been underway previously to move the information, this energy information, in front of people, but it's all taken manual inputs of data from one piece of information to another. Through this effort, the idea here is that this will be automatically moved into the MLS system. There are a number of pilots right now that the Department of Energy is initiating. New Hampshire, Vermont, Alabama, Arkansas are all piloting home energy score efforts in the existing homes market. I mentioned previously the effort to come up with a standardized label for presenting this information. So this is another project called Empress, which doesn't necessarily mean anything except that it's being led through Rhode Island, and the National Association of State Energy Officials is leading this effort. And this is for those states, which there are at least a dozen of them, and probably more, that have in place active home energy rating systems for new construction and home energy scores for existing homes. They've got different metrics. One has 0 to 100 points, another 1 to 10. In order to try to avoid customer confusion, this effort is making an effort to try to have some harmonization and consolidation of some of that information in simplified ways so that customers can better understand it. There's quite a bit of work working with the multiple listing services and in partnerships with realtors, appraisers, lenders, and home inspectors to move this information forward. I'm just about to wrap up here. There's some labeling legislation that's been in the works recently and is currently in the works. Massachusetts did try last year. Actually, there's another attempt now to put forward a time of sale energy rating that didn't go through. I mentioned Vermont's S118 that's in place right now. The realtors are supporting a mandatory energy information disclosure at the time of sale, not requiring the audit, but making providing home buyers with information like this sheet that's on the right here about how much a home buyer's energy use might be and some resources to take care of that. We have tried mandatory initiatives in the past. They did not move forward. Oregon, however, was successful at moving this forward, and Roger will tell us something about this in the next session here. And finally, in terms of some lessons learned, just based on having done this for a while, we wanted to just put forward some of the highlights here, including don't reinvent the wheel. Both these systems work well for the markets they've been designed for. Home energy rating systems for new construction, home energy score for existing homes. We did a lot of work in looking at options that were out there before Vermont adopted the home energy score here as the best solution for our existing housing stock. We are working on establishing a standard label or a metric for some common understanding and to avoid customer confusion. And we'll hear a little bit about the approach that Oregon took to move this forward. Providing information at the time of sale or listing, that's the right time for people to make decisions about investing in what's going to be the largest investment of their life, probably, and information that will allow them to make some decisions is the right time. So including stakeholders in this conversation has been really a key bridge builder for us, especially with the realtors. They play a key role, have a lot of power, and can be a really strong ally in moving this forward. Multiple listing services, as Joan mentioned, there are quite a few of them. This is one of the biggest challenges we have in front of us now, but if we can build that bridge, we hope to see a lot of success. Utilities have resources available in jurisdictions that partner with them. We're seeing some great opportunities for getting these home energy scores out in front of people. Copy and steal everything. The case study approach, there's some great examples out there, lessons learned to borrow from. And really starting with the voluntary approach. Those of us that started with mandatory learned our lesson that really, if we're going to get most players on board, build those bridges, move things forward, start in voluntary, and the impact will have the greatest influence in markets. So that's all I had to say, and I'd be happy to answer questions after Roger does his piece.
All right, thank you so much, Richard. Another reminder, feel free to enter any questions you may have in your question box on the right-hand side of your screen for either Richard or any of the other speakers. So we'll be proceeding with our last speaker, Roger Kainu, with the Oregon Department of Energy's Planning and Innovation Division. Roger is an energy analyst and provides technical expertise, outreach, and training to building and construction industry professionals to promote better understanding of Oregon energy codes. He will provide us with a specific case study of how energy labeling has been applied at the state and municipal levels. So let's welcome Roger.
Thanks, Glenn. Glad to be on the call. Looks like I've done the same thing with the, there we go, got back to my first slide. That's always a positive. So without going back over things that the previous speakers have already explained, I'd like to just start with sort of a brief history of what's happened in Oregon. Back in 2009, the legislature took a look at home energy performance scoring, and a bill, Senate Bill 79, was introduced and approved, and that required a task force to study and evaluate energy use in new and existing commercial and residential buildings throughout Oregon. It also required us to develop recommendations for a voluntary energy score system, and you just heard Richard indicate that. Somehow we learned this lesson early on, that voluntary is the way to start. And the third thing required by the task force was to make recommendations regarding the implementation of a statewide mandatory energy performance score system. So they actually came out with a voluntary system, but we wanted to take a look at what mandatory would look like, and you've already heard where we ended up. So a task force of industry stakeholders recommended a voluntary score system at the state level, leaving participation wide open while encouraging the market to grasp the value of use to drive business implementation. And that was a big deal. We wanted to make sure that the market was involved, that it wasn't state government just mandating everything. We're very attuned to that. States' work created an effective framework for cities to use if they chose to implement scoring system programs. And I'll get to that with Portland. They really looked to us. Our framework that we developed was successful, and they saw that right away. So the task force developed rules that required certification and licensure for home energy score assessors, building professionalism in the marketplace, and rules also required score systems to be reviewed and pass examination to support accuracy and consistency. So the slide you're looking at shows a duplication of a house, and when you're standing out at the curb, you would no way understand why one house would use twice as much energy, but it can happen. And you see that with cars, hence the MPG relevancy, although home energy scoring really is more about gallons to a year. So that's a unique distinction, but it's still a label of performance, and that's where the two are associated together. So in slide 1, Oregon saw the need to assist consumers with energy-related information in the home buying transaction. As you've heard from previous conversations, consumers have very little access to information about a home's energy profile, and oftentimes will contact utility representatives to find what they consider to be a high and low of their energy bill over the past. This information is most often irrelevant to the potential buyer, as it can really be an inaccurate portrayal of actual home performance. People looking for energy information will seek information. However, in this case, what they found was information that provided very little consistency and usefulness. In Oregon, we had 3 different scoring systems operating while I took a look at this. Each system relayed valuable information. Multiple systems producing scores with multiple variations caused stakeholders to question how we could possibly not confuse consumers. The point is with the 3 different systems, they all came up with a different result, slightly off from the others. Some varied up to 46%. And not that those scores were bad, it's just that they weren't consistent with each other. So that really created critical mass for our team. It was a critical issue that Oregon wrestled with. Some systems are more complex and granular, and while that may offer higher precision, the foundation of all score systems are based on assumptions and open to criticism around those assumptions. The Oregon team landed on an appropriate precision level and required one system to be used. This does not eliminate other systems and labels to operate in Oregon, as I explained before, but it does limit to one system who will receive this statement. This is an authorized Oregon score. The US DOE Home Energy Score is the system that gets the seal of approval from Oregon and provides clarity, consistency, and usefulness of information. The score not only indicates performance, but goes much further to suggest to consumers what can be done and at what potential cost to improve their home and score. So the second slide I have for you there, let's see if I can keep it on that slide. The City of Portland recently passed an ordinance. If those of you don't know, the City of Portland is the largest metro area in Oregon. They passed an ordinance that makes home energy scoring mandatory beginning January 1st of 2018 with each real estate listing for sale. That'll be an estimated 14,000 homes which will transact in 2018, which creates an immediate market for assessors. As you heard me indicate before, we did make sure that the assessors that will be doing that work are professionals. They're certified, their training is reviewed and approved, and they do have licensure. The city has been working with the state to implement their program and set the city up for success with trained assessors, program implementers that not only work in the city but across the state. Real important for the state of Oregon to have a process that works not only locally in one city but also that can be repeated throughout other cities. The city agreed with the stakeholder panel that a score label must be easily communicated and have information that consumers find relevant. They too found the US DOE Home Energy Score to be easily communicated and equipped with relevant consumer education information to make the program a success. Other cities in Oregon are starting to show signs of interest in developing their own home energy scoring programs. They are watching how Portland is setting the program up and coordinating with the state. As a state representative, I continually reach out to cities and help them understand the importance of educating local consumers, a part of my job that I truly enjoy. Each city appears to have the same desire to increase consumer awareness and education that would drive good decisions about home performance. Keeping local dollars invested in the community appears to resonate with cities, as well as helping consumers make powerful buying decisions. And with that, I know I went through that information very quickly, but I wanted to end up so we have some time for questions.
All right, thank you so much, Roger, and I want to thank everyone else for their presentations as well. It was a really great summary and introduction to the home energy labeling issue. I also want to encourage folks to enter questions in the question box on the right-hand side. And I do have a few questions here that did come in. And the first one is really about some of the challenges that there might be in implementation and what would be perhaps some of the major barriers and how those might be addressed, and I think in particular data privacy concerns. If any of the presenters would like to respond.
I can go and you guys can add, or vice versa. Well, I mean, I think at the local level they can discuss it probably, even better than I can. But from what I've heard and what I've seen is, first I'll get to data privacy at the end. But the challenges I think that we always have in energy efficiency is really generating demand. So I think to some degree we're trying to generate demand at point of sale, but you really need home inspectors who are interested and sort of know how to sell it as well. And so that's one of the things we're running up against a little bit. So if there's not a mandate, getting people to even know what it is, I think once they do know what it is, there will be a demand. But until that's the case, it's sort of like, why should I pay for something I've never heard of, kind of thing. So demand is always an issue. Training, I think we've tackled a lot of that, but it always can be a little bit tricky, or it can be tricky depending on, how much enthusiasm people have for the training. And even though it's free, it does take some time. And then in terms of data privacy, I will kind of punt a little bit to the folks here. One way that we've encouraged our partners to deal with it is to basically just get a signature at the time of the score, just saying, I'm willing to release this, or I opt in or I opt out, depending on how they want to do it. We can give you sample release language and that sort of thing. Everything at DOE is kept privately, and it's shared only with the partners. So if you were the state of, Idaho or whatever, and you had a bunch of assessors that were working under your program, then the state of Idaho could access those assessments and those scores. But otherwise, somebody in Missouri couldn't access those. And also, if it was a private, and let's say it was a utility in Idaho, the utility might only have access to it. So it kind of depends on who the partner is overseeing the assessors. If it's a bunch of individual home inspectors, they can work under a national partner, but they would only see their individual assessments that they've done. Obviously, the ones they've done, they can pull down and retrieve. I hope that somewhat answers it, or begins to answer it.
This is Richard. I can add something else. I don't know if Roger has something to add as well too. I just want to acknowledge that I feel like this is one of the major issues that has sort of bubbled up as these national or state and I guess really state and regional efforts have been undertaken. The home energy, the Helix project, home energy labeling and exchange, the efforts to move these home energy scores in the multiple listing service has, as part of the team membership, has been the Vermont Law School, who's been doing an extensive legal review of data privacy issues. And so we are, that team is wrestling with what the right answer is and what data is public and what is private. I mean, clearly right now there's a lot of tax information that shows up on Realtor.com or Trulia or some of these other for sale real estate sites that comes from public information. And one of the questions is energy information also public as well? I think Joan's right that the probably conservative approach here is to ensure that on an opt-in basis that homeowners give their approval to make that information available and publicize that on the multiple listing service. But I would say that the jury is still somewhat out there, and this is new ground that's being forged to try to figure out what the right answer is in this respect.
Thanks, Richard.
And just to be clear, we don't, I'm sorry, go ahead, Roger. Do you want to say something on that?
Oh, I just want to mention, from Portland's perspective, I've been watching this carefully, and what I've found is that utilities and cities and states and that sort of thing have a real sensitivity about this issue, and they should. But what I've seen in front of major groups of consumers is that they're well aware of authorization forms, and they're more than happy to get involved and sign those authorization forms. So from a consumer perspective, they would like that information shared if it helps the process along.
Yeah, and I was just going to say that we never collect any information about individuals, and you're not collecting their personal usage. So that can be tricky if you're collecting utility bills, but since this is an asset rating, which, as I think we've said, means that it's based on the equipment, the foundation, it's really the structure of the house. It's what's conveying with the house. It's not about the people that live there. That many people don't feel like it's really an issue because a lot of it's public already. the square footage of the lot, et cetera. All that stuff is public. So I think I agree. The jury's a little bit out, but we do try to be careful about what we collect and what we don't collect.
Great, thanks. And I guess to follow up, there was a question, and it sounds like that may have been answered by Richard already, but whether Trulia, Redfin, Zillow actually receive that information as well, and whether they're able to post that and not just, say, MLS.
Joan may have an update on this. I know that some of those real estate listing services are about to, or have shortly, not too long ago, started offering a sort of simplified home energy score or home energy labeling approach, and so they don't have access to, at this point in time, they don't have access to the home energy scores, the 60,000 home energy scores that Joan mentioned. They are interested in it, and the question is whether homeowners would allow them to publicize those scores, or what's public and what isn't. I think the jury's still out, and we're trying to figure out how these relationships and the data flow, data ownership, privacy, and data flow pieces work.
I mean, from a technical standpoint, obviously, it would not be complicated to share the information with Trulia and Redfin and all the others, Realtor.com, if it's allowed to be shared. It's not it's not like you can only share it one way or all that, and they're setting up these systems to decide who gets to see what based on what they find out about privacy. But then what's already up in Trulia and Redfin and all that is everything that's available through tax assessments, and so there's actually quite a bit of information on some of that, because we looked at there's some big companies like CoreLogic and Black Knight that do all this data collection and aggregation, and then they either sell it or buy it or do different things with it. And they're the ones that are frequently working with the multiple listing services. And when we looked at the list of the characteristics that you can find out, it's a lot more detailed than I ever expected. So they basically can take anything that's already in public record and pull it all together. So whatever's out there can make its way to Trulia. This stuff is not in public record right now, so it's not making it that way.
Great, and we have another question here, and this goes to kind of statewide initiatives and which ones seem to be most effective. So this may be more for either Roger or Richard, but I guess really looking at if there's some advice that either of the speakers might have on what type of approaches seem to have been either most cost-effective or also to encourage the highest participation, because I guess that's also a question, how you ensure if it is to some extent voluntary. I guess it depends on this mandate versus voluntary, if that could potentially be addressed as well, and how, if one had a voluntary program, how that might be encourage higher participation as well.
I'm sure Joan has an opinion on this as well. This is Richard, but I would answer that by saying I think that probably the most effective programs have been those that have been associated with utility initiatives. Places like Connecticut that do 10 or 12,000 home energy audits and site visits a year and leave behind a home energy score have generated more of these than any sort of voluntary open market situation at this point in time. So clearly partnering with an entity that is already focused on energy and going to be in people's homes and can easily create a computer API link, so you just push a button and a home energy score is generated as part of that audit process. That's probably going to be the way to generate the most volume where we are now.
Roger, did you want to add anything there?
Sure. I think Richard hit the nail on the head. I would say, though, that if you're considering it for your state, to give us a call, and it takes a little bit of analysis with your own individual situation, the environment you're working within. So we'd want to hear your thoughts of what's going on there, and then help you make some relevant decisions.
Yeah, and I would just say that it really does depend on your state, and what Richard was getting at, I think, in terms of it is kind of like an ecosystem or something where it's sort of like any product. If you get a lot of things kind of pushing in the same direction, it really helps. So what we found was that when utilities, made the investment to start it, then the contractors, it was easier for them to sell it and actually convert those scores into jobs, because it obviously includes recommendations for how you can improve the house, which is really the point of all this. I mean, we're not just scoring homes for the sake of scoring homes. So it's really to motivate investment in the improvements. But I think ideally you'd have, private sector behind you with contractors, you'd have the home inspectors, you'd do education on realtors. It can take a whole, approach to all the different sectors, both at point of sale and then just home ownership. But there's a lot of creative stuff going on, even utilities that are contacting new people who've just bought a home, trying to get them to then, I've heard that Con Ed is thinking about doing this now, to try to get them a score and get them to then make improvements, because a lot of people make improvements the first year they live in a house. So I think you can think through what it is you're trying to achieve, and you can either start, with a pilot, or you can, at legislatures, I assume you probably don't do as many pilots, but, start small or forge ahead with either one. I think, as Richard said also, you can start with just trying to get it in front of people by saying this is an option for you when you get or it's an option for you through your utility or through your Home Depot or through your whatever. It's something that can be there for them to understand that's available.
Well, it appears that is all the questions we have for today, and we are just past the top of the hour. So I think it's a good time to conclude. I want to extend a great thanks to our presenters today. I think they provided a really good overview and discussion of this growing topic, and I think there's likely to be more activity in the coming year. Also wanted to thank our attendees for attending, and also remind them that we will have a recording of the webinar as well as those presentations posted on our website within a week or so. And please visit the Energy Program webpage. We will be having other webinars and a suite of webinars coming up this spring for one of our energy series, or actually natural resources and infrastructure webinar series. So again, thank you for joining us, and we look forward to having you on our next webinar.
Thank you so much.